What the hell is that doing on my land? I stood frozen, staring at a flawless private runway cut straight through my family's wheat field, with $1 million jet rolling forward like it owned the place. I had been gone for 3 months. 3 months sitting in Houston hospitals while my father fought cancer. I came home to find the Willowbrook HOA had turned my 80-year-old heritage farm into their personal airport. Vivian Ashworth Sterling, the HOA queen herself, waved from the jet stairs in a designer dress. "Welcome back, darling. Hope you don't mind. We finished the community improvement project while you were away." Mind. They paved over my grandfather's wheat with asphalt and runway lights. "This is my land." "Was your land," she said with a smirk, stepping into the jet. "Check your mailbox. The legal papers are there." What Vivian didn't know was that I was about to turn her game against her in ways she never imagined. Comment where you're watching from. 3 months ago I had everything. A 200-acre farm my grandfather bought with sweat and blood, and a government job that actually mattered. Now I was staring at documents that stole my family's legacy while I watched my father die. My name is Griffin Delqua. Weekdays, I'm FAA Regional Director for the Southwest Division, managing air traffic policy from a dull Dallas office, controlling every aircraft operation from Texas to New Mexico. Weekends, I came home to the farm my grandfather built in 1943, still smelling of motor oil and stubborn pride. This land fed 3 generations of Delquas. Dad expanded it in the 70s, built relationships with every restaurant and farmer's market for 50 miles. The sweet smell of August corn mixed with coffee in the mornings. The crunch of wheat under your boots at harvest. The soil that still remembered my grandfather's hands. This wasn't just farming. It was legacy. Willowbrook Estates grew around us over 15 years. At first, nobody minded a working farm next door. Property values soared. Tech executives and oil money moved in, charmed by the rural look. They used our fields in their marketing brochures. Live beside real Texas agriculture. They brought buyers to our harvest festivals, bought our corn for fancy dinners, even borrowed my tractor when their machines failed on 5-acre lawns. Then leadership changed. Enter Vivian Ashworth Sterling, real estate royalty whose family owned half the strip malls between here and Austin. She saw fertile land and called it wasted space. "Why grow food when you can park private jets?" she told me last spring, stepping around mud in designer boots. I laughed and wiped dirt from my hands. "It grows food, Vivian." Her smile stayed cold. "Progress requires sacrifice." When Dad was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer, I left for Houston. 3 months sleeping in chairs that smelled like disinfectant and grief, watching the strongest man I knew fade while machines counted his heartbeats. That's when the vultures moved. 2 weeks after I left, Vivian called an emergency HOA meeting. Claimed my irrigation system caused flooding risks. She brought paperwork and frightened neighbors. Emergency powers let them act fast. Their 4-step theft was simple. File an emergency petition while the owner is unreachable. Hire friendly appraisers to value aviation land at farm prices. Deposit the insult into court escrow. Start construction immediately under emergency permits. Mrs. Rosalie, my 70-year-old neighbor who brought soup during chemo, called crying. They threatened my taxes if I voted no. My bank froze my loans. Farm workers were told I sold the land. I even got a sympathy card from Sterling's law firm with transfer papers inside. Dad died asking about the fall harvest. I told him everything was fine. What else could I say? That our century-old legacy was disappearing under asphalt while I held his weakened hand. The papers waiting in my mailbox were perfect. Emergency condemnation. Proper compensation. All legal. But emergencies must be real and federal law requires notice. Notice I never received because I was beside my dying father. They thought I was the perfect victim. A grieving farmer who couldn't fight back. They were wrong. I hired Rebecca Martinez, an Austin attorney who made developers cry in 3 counties. She spread the documents across my kitchen table. They screwed up. Emergency powers are for hurricanes, not irrigation ditches. While she built the case, I started my own investigation. Cameras went up around the property. Gear I knew from FAA security work. That's when I learned Vivian wasn't just stealing land. She was building an empire. My cameras caught weekend parties. Wealthy residents flying in from Dallas and Colorado. Brochures advertising charter flights. She was running a commercial airport on my stolen land. One night, microphones caught her voice. We checked his hospital visits. Knew when he'd be unreachable. A county commissioner laughed. Cancer timing was a gift. They had planned this for 6 months. Dad's illness wasn't an accident. It was their opening. Vivian even hired a private investigator to profile me. His report said I was probably an airport maintenance worker with delusions of authority. If only he knew. Rebecca filed our federal lawsuit Tuesday morning. Due process violations, fraudulent appraisal, abuse of emergency powers. By Friday, anonymous complaints hit my FAA supervisors. Calls from politicians. Agencies swarmed my remaining land. EPA, OSHA, IRS. None found anything, but the message was clear. Surrender. Then Rebecca uncovered the smoking gun. HOA paid $500,000 to Lanier Aviation Consulting. I knew that name from FAA databases. It belonged to Sterling's law firm. They'd been registering aircraft for the board for over a year. They hadn't just stolen my land. They'd been planning their airport while Dad took chemo. Here's what they didn't know about this so-called janitor. I don't just see aircraft records. I control them. Every registration and flight plan in the Southwest passes through my systems. Vivian's illegal airport lit up my screen like Christmas. Standing where wheat once grew, watching her third charter flight taxi out, I started documenting everything. Tail numbers. Passenger counts. Violations. They wanted to play in my world. Fine. County inspectors came next. Water contamination claims. Fire code complaints. Animal control noise reports. All traced to Sterling's law firm. Rebecca smiled. Malicious prosecution. Then I heard Vivian with an aviation consultant. We need commercial operations by Memorial Day. He warned her about FAA certification. She laughed. We have friends in federal aviation. Griffin won't be a problem much longer. That trail led to Deputy Administrator Harold Blackwood. Political donations. Consulting fees. He was high enough to crush careers. But I had something he didn't. Raw data. My cameras caught her phone call. Can't you transfer him to Alaska? Blackwood laughed. Performance reviews. Budget cuts. There are ways. That afternoon, Washington emailed me about restructuring my position. They were destroying my career. But in doing so, they exposed everything. Bribes. Retaliation. Conspiracy. I sat in my kitchen with evidence that could end careers in Washington. This wasn't about my farm anymore. It was about showing them what happens when you corner the wrong federal employee. I called the FBI. Agent Sarah Rosalie met me the next morning at a truck stop. Diesel and bacon filled the air, reminding me of mornings with Dad. I laid the evidence out like cards on a table. Recordings. Bank transfers. Abuse of power. Her eyes widened. We've had Blackwood on our radar. The sweet smell of justice was finally replacing aviation fuel. Your case might expose something far larger than any of us expected. While I was preparing federal files, Vivian was building financial landmines. I came home one afternoon and saw a county tax assessor's truck parked in my gravel driveway. A thin man holding a clipboard stood there looking like he wanted to be anywhere else in the world. Mr. Delacca, I'm here regarding your property reassessment, he said, his voice trembling like dry leaves in the wind. The county had revalued my remaining land at commercial aviation rates. The papers felt like a punch to the chest. Annual property taxes, $47,000, due in 30 days. Commercial aviation rates. This land had grown crops for 80 years. Not anymore, he said quietly. New zoning classifies it as aviation industrial due to its proximity to active runway facilities. He couldn't look me in the eye. The cruelty of it was almost impressive. They couldn't take my land outright, so they planned to tax me into collapse, bankrupt me, then step in as saviors offering to buy it cheap. But I had learned one thing about corruption. When they push harder, you respond smarter and stronger. I called Agent Sarah Rosalie immediately. They just turned the tax system into a weapon. How fast can federal investigators audit county assessments for civil rights violations? Already in motion, she said. Funny how sudden tax hikes draw federal attention when they line up with whistleblower retaliation. At the same time, Vivian launched her media attack. The local paper ran a headline that screamed, "Rogue federal employee terrorizes community leaders." The article painted me as an unstable official abusing authority to harass innocent developers. Anonymous sources claimed I threatened to shut down civilian flights out of personal revenge. They made me sound like a drunk air traffic controller gone mad with power. But that night, Vivian handed me the greatest gift of the entire war. My security system recorded her meeting with 3 men in expensive suits beside the runway lights that now blinked where my grandfather's wheat once grew. The sound was clear in the still night air. The Griffin problem needs a permanent solution, Vivian said, her heels grinding into soil that remembered my father's boots. Can your people arrange an administrative accident? Budget cuts, reorganization, performance issues? One man laughed like they were talking about the weather. Blackwood is already processing termination, but if you want certainty, it costs more. How much? 200,000 cash. Offshore account. My blood went cold. They weren't just trying to fire me. They were buying my destruction from inside the federal government. And they had done it on tape. I spent the night copying every recording and every document to secure servers in 3 different states. If anything happened to me, everything would be sent automatically to the FBI, Congress, and the national press. Morning brought an unexpected visitor. Mrs. Rosley stood at my door with tears running down her face, her hands shaking like winter branches. Marcus, I'm so sorry. They came last night. Vivian, her lawyer husband, HOA security. They said if I kept helping you, they'd ruin my grandson's military career. Take his clearance. Rage flooded my mouth like metal. Threatening an old woman's family crossed every line. Please tell me you recorded this, I said. Through her tears, she smiled and pulled out an old flip phone. I've been recording everything since they threatened my taxes. My grandson showed me how before Afghanistan. That was when it hit me. Vivian had been so focused on destroying me that she ignored the people she had bullied and crushed along the way. It was time to show her what happened when you underestimated the anger of Texas neighbors. I called Sarah again. I've got bribery, witness intimidation, and conspiracy on tape. How does tomorrow sound for arrest warrants? Perfect, she said. And bring Mrs. Rosley. This just became a RICO case. That night, sleep wouldn't come. Dad's death, the stolen farm, corruption reaching into Washington pressed down like August heat. So I did what farmers do when they can't rest. I worked. Rebecca had dropped off 3 boxes of HOA financial records weeks earlier. Spreadsheets, contracts, endless paperwork I had avoided. At 3 in the morning, fueled by black coffee and anger, I started digging. What I found made my hands shake so badly I spilled coffee across the page. The Willowbrook HOA was broke. Not struggling but criminally bankrupt. They owed $3.2 million in infrastructure bonds for projects that cost triple what they should have. The contractor, Sterling Development, belonged to Vivian's family. They billed $5 million for $2 million worth of work, then loaned the HOA money at 18% interest to cover their own inflated bills. The airfield wasn't about luxury. It was a desperate grab to avoid fraud charges. But that was just the beginning. Cross-checking aircraft tail numbers through FAA databases revealed shell companies tied to Sterling family holdings. Fake businesses running a real airline from my stolen land. The smell of fuel outside my window finally made sense. This wasn't recreation. It was organized crime wearing a community label. Vivian thought targeting me was smart because my job made me vulnerable. She assumed a farmer with a desk job wouldn't know how to use federal power. She was wrong. As FAA Regional Director, I control the systems that track planes, pilots, and permits across 5 states. Every commercial flight needs approval. Willowbrook had none. That meant every flight was illegal. Every passenger was evidence. Every dollar was laundering. Every landing added another charge. As the sun lit the runway that once grew wheat, I stopped feeling angry and started thinking like an administrator. I didn't need my land back. I could dismantle their entire empire. I just needed overwhelming proof. That's when the plan formed. Labor Day weekend, Willowbrook's big showcase. Investors, politicians, press. Maximum exposure. I would let them operate and document everything with equipment they'd never notice. When they felt untouchable, I dropped 30 years of federal authority on them. They thought they robbed a helpless farmer. Instead, they built their crimes under the supervision of the one official who could destroy them. The next morning, I began building the largest federal trap of my career. First call was Sarah. I need 3 months to document everything. Can you coordinate agencies quietly? What's the deadline? Labor Day weekend. Send me everything. While she assembled her task force, I turned my farm into a surveillance grid. Cameras disguised as irrigation gear. Audio pickups along the runway. Motion sensors tracking every flight. All approved under FAA security rules. My father's old workshop became a monitoring station. Transponders reported tail numbers, speed, destinations. Every crime was being recorded in official government logs. As I told Rebecca, they weren't just committing crimes. They were filing paperwork about them. By June, Vivian was giving investor tours. Dallas and Houston elites paid initiation fees for private flights. My cameras captured unlicensed charters and hidden revenue. The audio was gold. 50,000 to join, then hourly rates, Vivian said, heels clicking on asphalt that once echoed with boots. Total privacy. Political access. She wasn't selling flights. She was selling influence. The sound of surveillance equipment became my favorite morning noise. Better than roosters. July brought daily flights to Colorado, Martha's Vineyard, even overseas. Customs laws, tax codes, environmental rules, all violated. Criminals always overreach. And they did. They built a terminal where my corn once grew, with fuel tanks breaking every regulation. In August, surveillance caught her talking to Blackwood again. "We need certification fast," she said. 2 million usual accounts. Done. And after Labor Day, the Griffin problem ends. They were planning my career death. Perfect. I coordinated agencies like an orchestra. FBI for arrests, DA for laundering, EPA for environmental crimes, IRS for assets, FAA for aviation violations. Let them celebrate. Document everything. Then strike. Mrs. Rosley brought pie and gossip. "She's telling people you're unstable. Says you'll be handled after Labor Day." "Keep recording," I said. "After this weekend, we'll handle her." By Labor Day Eve, I had proof of conspiracy across dozens of federal laws. Fuel replaced the smell of crops. Every illegal flight added another charge. I raised my coffee mug to Dad's memory. They thought they were building an empire. They were building prison sentences. Then August brought her cruelest move. She turned the government on me. Black SUVs rolled into my driveway. "Mr. Delua, we're executing a warrant for abuse of authority," the investigator said. She had bought internal affairs. Accusations flew. Misuse of equipment, harassment, ethics violations. But everything I did was legal. While they searched, my hidden system recorded Vivian laughing with Blackwood. "Is he finished?" Termination scheduled after Labor Day. The next day, my cameras caught a darker meeting. "Accidents happen," one man said. "Brake failure. Sad but believable." Timeline: after my hearing. They planned my death. Thursday, the news called me a rogue official suffering a breakdown after my father's death. They thought they were burying me. Instead, they had documented their own destruction. Using my father's memory to excuse their crimes made my blood boil. That night, Rebecca called with information that changed everything. Marcus Discovery had uncovered financial records proving this operation stretched across 4 states. 12 farms already stolen for illegal aviation networks. More than 3,000 acres of farmland gone. The weight of it hit me like a punch to the chest. My farm wasn't their only target. They had been wiping out family farms across the Southwest for years. "How many families, Rebecca?" I asked. "Dozens," she said. Every one of them attacked during moments of weakness. Deaths, sickness, financial collapse. They hunted struggling farmers like predators circling injured prey. The warm evening air filled with jet noise instead of cricket songs suddenly meant something bigger than revenge. This was about protecting every family farmer in America from organized corporate thieves. Friday evening, I stood in Dad's wheat field, now covered with aircraft, as they prepared for Monday's celebration. Senators, state officials, business elites were all invited to praise Vivian's so-called community success. The sharp stink of jet fuel poisoned air that once smelled like soil and sweat. But every illegal plane parked on my land was another federal crime on record. My phone buzzed. All federal teams in position. Arrest warrant signed. Media coordinated. Ready on your signal. Agent Rosalie. I typed back, "Monday morning. When they're all here. When they think they've won." Sunday night, I visited Dad's grave for the last time before it ended. The cold stone felt like a promise beneath my hand. "Tomorrow, Dad. Tomorrow we get justice for every farmer they ruined." The distant whine of jets preparing for the celebration drifted on a wind that should have carried the smell of harvest. Instead, it would carry the sound of handcuffs snapping shut on people who had stolen too much for too long. It was time to show them what happens when you attack the wrong federal employee. Labor Day morning arrived under a clear Texas sky that made you believe justice still existed. But instead of meadowlarks, the air filled with federal helicopters circling Willowbrook. Vivian's aviation celebration was everything she promised. A parade of wealth, arrogance, and crime that would have made a carnival king jealous. By 9 a.m., luxury jets landed every 10 minutes. Gulfstreams, Citations, even a massive Boeing business jet that used the entire length of what used to be my grandfather's wheat field. My surveillance system recorded every tail number, every passenger, every violation in real time. The guest list looked like a corruption directory. 3 congressmen. 2 state senators. The governor's chief of staff. Enough executives to stock a prison block. All there to celebrate the partnership that stole my family's land. Then the real shock came. A black limousine rolled up and Deputy Administrator Harold Blackwood stepped out. "Marcus," Agent Rosalie whispered through my earpiece. "Your boss just arrived." I watched through binoculars as Vivian hugged him like an old ally. The microphones caught everything. "Perfect timing," Vivian said. "The termination papers were signed this morning. Griffin will be unemployed by sunset and under investigation by dawn. And the other matter we discussed is arranged. A tragic accident tonight." Rage filled my mouth like metal. They were planning my murder as the grand finale. But they made one mistake. Every word was recorded on federal equipment, creating proof of conspiracy to kill. At 11 a.m., the ribbon cutting began with the drama of a funeral. In a way it was. They were burying farmland for corporate profit. Vivian stood where corn once grew, wearing a dress worth more than most farmers made in a year. "Today marks a new chapter for our community," she said. "A move from outdated farming to modern development." The wealthy crowd applauded like she had saved lives instead of stealing land. Congressman Bradley followed. "This partnership shows what makes America strong. Progress requires hard choices." I nearly laughed. They were calling theft patriotism. Then Blackwood spoke. "As Deputy Administrator of the FAA, I certify this facility for commercial operations." Except it wasn't certified. I never approved those permits. He had just committed fraud in front of hundreds of witnesses and live cameras. My phone buzzed. "Teams ready. Judges standing by." I replied, "Wait. I want maximum exposure." At 1 p.m., they unveiled a bronze plaque honoring the leaders who made it happen. Vivian's name sat at the top, followed by every corrupt official involved. A monument to their own crimes. That's when I stepped out from hiding and walked toward the crowd. Every face turned toward the man they thought was finished. The crowd parted like I carried a disease. Vivian's face drained white. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, my voice echoing across the stolen runway, "I'm Griffin Delua, and I have something to share about this celebration." Security moved toward me. I raised my hands. "Relax. I just want to thank you for gathering here to document the largest aviation crime operation in Texas history." Silence fell, broken only by distant jet engines. "For 6 months, you've participated in theft of farmland, illegal aviation, permit fraud, political bribery, and conspiracy to commit murder. And every word, every action, has been recorded by federal surveillance under my authority." That's when I raised my hand and gave the signal. The sky exploded with justice. FBI helicopters dropped from the clouds. Dust filled the air. Agents rappelled down in black gear. "FBI. Nobody move." Panic erupted. Politicians ran. Executives deleted phones. One official tried to hide under a buffet table. There was nowhere to go. I spoke into the microphone meant for their celebration. "Welcome to the most documented federal crime scene in aviation history." Vivian screamed. "This is impossible. You're unemployed." Blackwood was already face down on the asphalt, zip-tied. "Actually," I said, "he just committed fraud in front of everyone." Agent Rosalie stepped forward. "For 6 months, we investigated theft, corruption, illegal aviation, and conspiracy to murder." One by one they fell. Bradley tackled near his car. Vivian handcuffed. "Vivian Ashworth Sterling, you are under arrest." "This is persecution," she cried. "You have the right to remain silent," Rosalie replied, "and I suggest you use it." News helicopters swarmed. Reporters shouted questions. "How long have you planned this?" one asked. "Since they stole my land while my father was dying," I said. "Nobody steals from farmers and walks free." Jets were chained and seized. "Total assets exceed $50 million, Rosalie announced. Vivian glared at me through bulletproof glass. "You destroyed the biggest criminal operation in Texas," I said. "Because you thought a farmer wouldn't fight back." 6 months later, I stood in my grandfather's wheat field again. Court orders returned the land within 30 days. The runway became gravel for county roads. Vivian got 12 years. Her husband 15. Blackwood 20. Politicians resigned. Guards went to prison. But the real victory was $53 million given back to farming families across 4 states. My share built the Heritage Farm Protection Foundation. We've helped 67 families fight developers. Legal aid. Federal advocacy. Emergency support. Dad's workshop is now a legal center. Coffee mixes with phone calls from families we saved. This spring I planted my grandfather's wheat again. Corn grows where the terminal stood. The air smells like soil instead of fuel. The farmer's market sells out in hours. The HOA dissolved. The town created agricultural protections. The Heritage Festival now celebrates farming and accountability. My nephew returned to farm with me. Rebecca runs our clinic. Agent Rosalie became our chief investigator. Every morning I walk fields that remember my grandfather's hands. Standing where the runway once scarred the earth, I hear Dad's voice in the wind. Well done, son. The foundation has one mission. No corporation, no HOA, no politician will ever destroy a family farm again. You know what matters most about Griffin's story? Not the arrest, not the handcuffs. It's what he did after. He could have stopped once he won, but he didn't. He used the money to protect others. That's the lesson. When bullies come, you have a choice. Break or fight back with knowledge. He won because he understood power and used it.